Okay. It looks like it. It's going now.
Oh. Okay.
Concrete floor.
It goes there and stops here.
Every day.
You can twist it sideways. Down. Yep. Okay. Okay, we won't.
Is this? Whose is this? Here. We've probably got a bad connection right here.
Do you know?
Is this ours?
Yes, Mom's.
I got down as a... It's okay. We better go though.
Yeah.
Wait.
Okay. Okay, we won't have a tape to rely on, so you guys are really going to have to be good with your writing down. If you need correction, correct it. Okay, I'll read what Rosalind and Doug wrote first, and then maybe everybody can go around and maybe tell one thing. They did good. They got this on time. They didn't send it in the same envelope at the same time, so we got it. Okay. When we went to Cape Canaveral, Florida for the summer, I'm quite sure that was when it happened, and stayed in a hotel. The first night, Mom and Dad put 2 double beds together, and either all us kids or at least all us gals slept in the makeshift huge bed. Being stuck right in the middle age-wise, I was stuck right in the middle of the 2 beds, and sure enough, during the night, the 2 beds slowly pushed apart, and I sunk deeper and deeper, till finally I fell to the floor in between the beds.
Poor Rosalind.
I think we only tried that one night, thank goodness. Speaking of sleeping, I remember our last night in Huntsville. The furniture was already gone with the movers, and all the kids were sleeping on the front room floor but me. I was invited to stay with my friend Susan, the 2 houses down, where the German Shepherds were. Remember that? They made a real party of it, not the dogs. Gave me a gift, had ice cream, and we stayed up late. But I started getting homesick. I was only in the 4th grade and didn't understand why, but it didn't feel the same at their home as it did at ours. It didn't have the same spirit. I said I wanted to go home, and Susan cried and tried to change my mind, but I cried and was, of course, stubborn, you know me. Her mom didn't know what to do. I called home, woke up Dad, and told him. He, too, tried to change my mind. That sounds familiar. I've had to do that a few times. But gave up and walked over to fetch me. Walking home, he really got after me. I'm sure it was embarrassing for him, not to mention inconvenient, but I didn't mind. We walked in the house, and I happily lay down on the carpet amidst all your sleeping bodies and just felt so good inside. I was so glad to be back where I belonged. Another Huntsville memory, which I've remembered many times since moving to Florida, is the tornado. We all put on our coats and huddled together under our huge table. It seems like it's shrunk a little since then. And listened to the radio. I was really frightened. As I recall, it went right over our valleys, but hit Montesano. How do you say that? Montesano? I can remember. Twice now we've had real close calls with tornadoes, and the base siren has sounded, and I've put the kids in our hallway, which closes off with 5 doors. They take their blankets and pillows and stuffed animals, and I grab the phone, radio, and first aid kit. We call it camping out, and they love it. They aren't afraid. They think it's a great party. Once Doug wasn't even home. I don't love it. But as long as I keep that hidden from the kids, we'll be fine. Okay, that's Rosalind. That's what some things she remembers.
Remember that tornado watch that night?
This is Doug's 2 pages typewritten.
Yeah.
I haven't proofread it. I mean, not proofread, I mean so I could condense it. Let's see. Some would call me accident prone, but on the contrary, I am bona fide accident proof. I can boast of not having any accidents for many years and credit my early years of experience as training in caution. You can only be reckless and careless with your limbs and skin so long before the pain begins to tell you something. Oops, I just remembered that 2 weeks ago I stepped my right foot right into a 2-inch rusty nail while looking for turtles at the park with the family. So I guess I'm not quite as smart as I want to believe yet. Okay, a few incidents. At about age 2 or 3, I was climbing in our unfinished basement in Victoria, BC when I slipped from the framed wall 2x4s, and my leg caught on a 4-inch spike and ripped a 1-inch gash in my left shin. About that same age, I was turning somersaults around a railing on our backyard patio and came to a sudden stop when my forehead met the concrete and split open right in the middle. Oh. Rosalind has an identical scar right there on hers. 3 bike and 1 trike incidents bring back agonizing memories. A cotter pin in my shin, a high-speed sudden reversing of the handlebars caught me very centrally and required numerous stitches, and some worry on my parents' part whether I'd ever have a family of my own. As a 5 or 6-year-old, I was proud to wear the Indian-like loincloth bandaging. Then at age 11, I fell off a bike on a ramp with 2-inch spikes and gashed 2 cubical inches out of my left kneecap, which required 21 stitches, then 8 more later when I ripped it open playing too hard with my cast on. And to this day, my left knee is numb and bald of hair. My father saved my life on at least 2 occasions, I remember. Once when I slipped off the side of a steep mountain and tumbled down nearly to my death, if not for a tree holding me up on a family hike. And again while playing with my brother and dad at the rocky ocean coast in Victoria, and I slipped on some wet rocks and seaweed and fell into the cold Pacific Ocean water with heavy surfs crashing upon the rocks around the pool I slipped into. My brother has helped me develop my accident-proof nature also. While about 8 years old, he surprised himself and me with his spear-chucking skill and landed a sharp 5-foot-long board splinter into my right cheek and gave me a man-made dimple after surgery.
That's not funny, Becky.
Well, that's a painful way to get a dimple, isn't it? I better not read the rest or we won't have time for anybody else. You guys can come read this if you want to.
He had more accidents than all you
Make up for all of us.
combined. Farrell's the only one that had any broken bones.
He's been active. I'm running a close second.
Okay, why don't we go this way? Why don't you just pick one? Let's pick one, and then if we have time, we'll do another one.
Are we supposed to tell a story about ourselves?
It doesn't matter. Something that you remember.
I don't have any stories about myself.
I do. Yes, you do. Just pick one that sounds whatever one you want. Don't push the button. Get your
When in his late teens, Larry was not known for his short hair.
Right.
One day I asked him to get a haircut. He usually was not very agreeable about getting one. However, on this particular occasion, he quickly replied, "Okay, which hair?"
figures.
Which one?
Which hair do you want me to cut?
Okay, go ahead then.
Oh, okay. I remember in Alabama when Keith was 3, and the girls were playing and the spider came walking toward them and they got so excited. Yeah, it was Carolyn and Sandra and they shrieked and yelled and hollered, and here came old Keith and he was talking. We couldn't understand what he was saying because he was little, but he jumped on that spider and tromped him, killed him dead away. He took care of his big sisters.
Oh, that's nice.
Your friends didn't do that to our neighbors.
Were they wolf spiders or something?
Mine weren't. What'd you go out with?
All right, Kim.
Well, to read mine. When I was about 3 years old, we were living in Provo. My sister and I shared a bedroom. I had the bottom bunk and she had the top. Our bunk bed was beside our window, and during the summer we would sleep with the window open. For some reason, one day the screen had been taken off our window, and that night we slept with the window open anyway. After we were asleep, a stray cat came into our backyard and jumped inside our window. It landed on my bunk and sat right on top of my chest. When I felt the pressure of something being on me, I opened my eyes to see only 2 big yellow eyes staring down at me in the dark. I don't remember what I did next, but I do remember sleeping with my parents the rest of that night.
Yeah, definitely. How old were you?
3.
Oh, boy.
This day I don't like cats.
Yeah. It's not working real good. We gotta be careful with it.
He understood everything.
Yeah, I know he did.
All you need to do is explain to Zach, and he'd just cooperate.
Oh, sure.
Maybe he'll smash
We
it.
wrote ours down. I thought we were supposed to. So read one. My father made an agreement with us boys that if we would keep the word of wisdom, he would take us hunting and fishing and pay for all of our equipment and licenses. I'm happy to say that I was never denied this privilege and caught a lot of fish in my youth. One of my earliest memories is of a fishing and camping trip that the whole family went on when I was about 5 years old. I had been fishing before but had never caught a fish. On this trip, Dad baited my hook with a worm and cast it in for me. I soon had a couple of nibbles, but was so nervous about catching my first fish that I hesitated. Dad anxiously urged me to set the hook, and I did, and began to reel it in. I soon was holding my first fish, a trout, probably a rainbow. It was puny, not really worth keeping, but it was my first one, so we kept it. It became dark just as I caught the fish, so we headed back to camp. Dad was just about as excited about the tiny fish as I was. In celebration, he put me on his shoulders and carried me into camp. We excitedly showed everyone the small catch. Everyone else had already eaten dinner, but we fried up the fish and I ate it. I went to sleep with a big grin on my face. I was so proud.
Did it say how old you were?
5,
Okay.
I think.
Yeah.
Me, I have questions on that.
All right, Keith. We're glad you stayed just for this.
Oh, thanks. I couldn't get out to get my card in.
Good move. Whoever part one.
They can never lose.
I wish it was written down, but one thing I remember as a teenager is we teepeed this girl's house. I believe it was her birthday or something. They had Doberman pinchers. We were real brave, and we went in and teepeed it anyway. And on the way out, it was out in Lehigh, and the sides of the roads were dirty, and it was raining. It rained earlier that week, and pulled off the side of the road and got stuck. And tried to push it out, couldn't push it out. Later got a ride home from some drunkards. They were pretty drunk. But anyway, we made it home real late, and we had to clean up the car as a Plymouth Valiant. Had to get all clean because the Grand Richards would come. That's the car we were going to take to pick them up. And so we got the car all cleaned up. Well, Dad went and pulled it out of the dirt first. We got all cleaned up and went and picked them up. Sunday morning, we had a huge fireside that the Grand Richards put on, and all my friends were there. Everyone I knew was there. It was like 6 o'clock in the morning, and my dad gave the first talk, and as he got up and he said, "Is my son present?" And I tried to hide, but I got up, and he said, "What did you do Friday night?" I said, "Well, I was out with my friends." He said, "Well, what were you doing?" I said, "Okay, we were out teepeeing." He said, "Well, tell us about your teepeeing. What happened?" I said, "Well, we teepeed at the girl's house." He said, "Well, what happened when we tried to leave?" And I said, "We got stuck in the mud." So I had to confess the whole thing, and then Dad talked about, well, who pulled you out? Who saved you? And I said, "Well, you saved it." And he said, "Why? Because I love you?" And he said, "Yeah." And then he said, "You know that I love everyone here?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, "Okay, you can go sit down, but before you sit down, I want you to know that the girl's house you teepeed is the Grand Richards' great-granddaughter." So he pointed me to my seat, and I started to walk down, and the Grand was sitting right there near, and so I stayed as far away from him. I didn't look at him at all. I kept my straight ahead, and I walked as quickly as I could, and didn't get very far. He went, "Young man." I looked at him, and I said, "Yeah," and he goes, "I want to shake your hand. Anyone fine enough to go with my granddaughter has to be a fine young man." And he talked about me until he died, and every time he called up her, Amy Shell, he always asked how I was doing. And if we were still going out, we never did ever go out. But I figured out later that he didn't know what teepee was. He thought I went out with her and didn't know that I teepee.
Well, that's okay, right?
Figured you were over at her house anyway, huh?
Yeah. And how old were you when you did that?
It was a youth fireside, so I don't know.
Old enough to drive.
Well, I was
16 or
married
17,
when
but
I didn't go because I was 2 years old.
we were 17.
Yeah, his brother's not here. One of them's about him.
Okay. Yeah.
Melinda, his sister, was 2 and barely potty trained, and she was very small. And he was about 4 years old, and she fell into the toilet, and all that were sticking out was her head and her hands and her feet, just up to the top of the toilet. And Brent went in and saw this, and he still remembers knowing that if he went over and pulled that lever, it would flush her down the toilet. And he was seriously contemplating it when his mom came in and pulled her out. And she remembers just being scared to death that he was going to flush her down the toilet. That's good. The story that I remember that has come to my mind was when Russell was in, I think it was in kindergarten over at Edison, and he was the magician. And he had on gloves that were longer. They were like 2 inches past his fingertips.
And they're for their circus,
yeah,
the kindergarten circus.
And he was supposed to pull a long scarves that were all attached out of his outfit, and he couldn't find them. I think he took a picture of it. My memory is. But he had his tongue sticking out the side of his cheek like he used to do when he was little, and he was just looking everywhere. I probably took him 2 or 3 minutes, and then someone came up. Didn't someone come up and show him where it was? I don't know. But I just remember sitting there watching him, just all embarrassed, trying to find those scarves.
It was funnier than if he'd have pulled it right out.
Russell. It was Russell that did that. He's not here to defend himself either.
Well, I wrote it down, but it's not written as well as Diana's been.
Does that mean it's about us?
Actually, you're not mentioned.
I thought this was your story.
I'm mentioned. With Diane. Okay. The fishermen and the family are all a bit different. Dad, of course, doesn't consider it a game, it's business. And you can tell he hopes that it goes well for everyone. Larry can move a boat pretty good when he hooks the fish. Maybe it's the great yank that snaps the line and he loses the lures. He has the
Yeah, we know about that.
many of them. Well, I just wasn't sure when he lost them, but he yanks the boat pretty good. Farrell seems surprised every time he catches a fish. So surprised that he jumps up.
No, just every time.
Every time.
Well, this is 10 years ago or so.
What did he say? Do you remember what he
Yeah,
said?
what did he say? Right.
I got one!
I got one. He just,
You guys all go to sleep. So.
Yeah.
you have to wake him up, right?
He's never capsized the boat, though. Or fallen over. I don't think Keith would go fishing if we didn't take food. Besides the boxes of treats that we take, Keith has his own supply in his pockets, and you know those coats have lots of pockets.
He would go anywhere.
And he eats the entire time. I wonder how many fish got away because he was laying back almost parallel to the boat and has his hands in the cookie bag. He just, he's just laying. He doesn't jump up though. Norman doesn't seem to care if he catches fish or not. He's just really glad to be out fishing. Russell has to be pushed and horsed and bribed to get out there, and he doesn't seem too thrilled to be sitting in a boat. And of course, the guys aren't the only ones that go fishing. They're just the most entertaining. Rosalind and I often go in the boat, but other than Rosalind's jokes, mostly I noticed. Towards normal.
What are you talking about? When Rosalind's in a boat, you can't get away from her. She's talking up a storm.
Well, I know. She tells her good jokes, but she's not silly.
Well,
Isn't
maybe
that silly?
Farrell or Larry or Dad have something to say about how you react when you're fishing.
You remember Farrell?
I do just fine. I don't know.
I remember her fishing.
See, that's what
Where did
they
she
say about
get
me.
these stories? She's never out there.
I am too. I haven't as much as I've had kids, but I just
She's very
love
reserved.
fishing.
The years gone by,
She just wouldn't hook her. She just wouldn't do the bait.
Yeah, I do, but I don't use one.
Okay, Dan, it's your turn.
We
I
had a
have
very
some
interesting
on
family. We grew up until I was 9 right down here on Spencer over by fire station number 2. In case any of you guys know where that is. It's right behind the old Bashes, which is Sally's Fabrics now. And we were kind of wild kids. We had a lot of fun.
I'm a chaperone.
Well, not all the time, but our dad was a gymnast, and the first thing he did was buy us this big, huge swimming set. I mean, it was huge. It seemed like it was 15 feet high. He didn't buy it, he built it out of pipes. He threaded it and everything, hooked it all together, cemented it all into the ground so it wouldn't move. And we used to walk up the poles like monkeys. We used to grab it and spread our toes and walk up the poles and walk across the top of it. And We were crazy.
Scares
So
me
we
to
would
death.
have like circuses and things, and all of us brothers and sisters would have all these routines to do and everything. All the neighborhood kids would come over and watch us, and then we had a big playhouse that we used to do things on too. One time we took all the Christmas trees everybody threw out, and we set them all up in the yard and made a forest and everything. And we did Robin Hood and everything, you know. And all the neighborhood kids would come to our house and play and mess around. We always had something going on. My older sister was always the one instigating everything. You know, she always was in charge of everything. So that's what.
Tell them about the cat.
We had a cat. I don't know if anybody did it on purpose, but somebody opened the freezer and it jumped in the freezer and was in there all night. When my dad opened the door, he always opened it in the morning to get the ice out, put it in his ice chest to go to work. He saw the cat in there and the feet were stuck on the bottom. The tail was stuck on the shelf above it, and I don't know if it made any noise or not, but he took it out and the tail broke off.
Oh,
But the cat lived and it was just fine.
Is that right?
Cat
Yeah.
broken tail.
Which life was that?
I don't know.
That was a night.
It lived.
There was one dog that they drained the blood out of it, froze it for, was it 3 hours? Put the blood back in. No, scientists, and it lived.
Yeah, the kids. That was one of your brothers. Guess what?
Okay, Larry.
Okay, I remember being assigned to talk for state conference, I think it was, and the stake was so spread apart that we had to go up to Payson or Fine and talk. It wasn't Payson. And then the next week talk here for state conference, and so we went up there and talked, and then the next weekend was a Know Your Religion. We were there, and Brother Shaw, I believe it was, came in and talked to Dad, and then he came and got me, and we all came home and got on our hiking boots and went up in the superstitions to Keith and Norman, was it? We're lost. So we hiked all night long and came out sometime before midday, I believe it was, around midday the next day. And so that was the best excuse I had to not give a talk.
You were scheduled to speak at that state conference.
And then they announced that the boys were saved, and now they're sending a party out to find the fathers that are lost.
It was a state priesthood meeting. I think I went up and talked with Dad, and then the next week I was supposed to talk here and got out of it.
Were you a high counselor then, Dwayne?
No
I
problem.
remember dancing the night before. Wasn't it?
Yeah, they were already out by the time we made the big move.
Larry, do you have one about Janet?
Oh yeah, she said to tell about, I couldn't tell like she did, but when I went over there and proposed to her, and she was shocked, of course.
But she was. It'd only been 5 years.
She almost strangled me for asking her.
She almost strangled
you. She's not here
you.
to tell her side of the story.
Yeah. We better ask her again later.
Anyway, well, I was kneeling down, and she gave me a big hug and almost choked me anyway. So we came back here and told well, Dad wasn't here.
Yeah, Dad.
So we had to wait.
Yeah, you were not at the table.
So they had to shuffle. We had to get Carolyn and Sandra out of the room so we could talk to Mom and Dad.
And we knew what it was. I did.
They wouldn't go. Finally they left, and then Mom talked them into playing a song on the piano or something. So we told Mom and Dad, and then we invited them back in to tell them. And they didn't want to come back in because they were having a good time.
I can't
And
imagine.
Farrell was here, or came later, and as it turned out, Farrell had the measles, even though he was had been vaccinated or fascinating. I can't remember which.
He was a returned missionary.
And so she got them too, and she had been vaccinated also, inoculated.
Did Norman get him at the same time?
I thought it was
She-
Norman.
she-
Yeah, Norman had him.
No,
The
it was
two
Sarah.
got sick and they came to see Norman.
It was Sarah.
You at 21?
Anyway, she got sick. She said that was the sickest she had remembered being at that point. Her mother said, well, if you can see her like this and still love her and want to marry her, then you'll still.
And then for weeks he'd take a rose over on their weekly anniversary when he asked her.
Pretty romantic, huh?
Every Sunday.
Yeah, the Meads sure struck that year, didn't they?
Yeah.
Okay, Mark.
I can't remember it.
I'll tell you.
Tell the story of what happened here.
I think you want to tell your own stories, Mark.
Yeah, don't rely on Larry to tell it.
Coaxing you into that. But I remember one. I'll tell if you don't know.
Did you get stuck by a cactus working?
I get kind of stuff. I had one thing happen to me. I think being on the farm, I had a lot of experiences. But when I was about 11 or 12, we had a '49 Chevy pickup, and we always got to drive it down the alfalfa fields on Center Street. There were some dairymen, the Millet family, would bring their cattle down Center Street and pasture them in our alfalfa field for a while, and then take them back and milk them in the evenings. And well, they had these big old herd bulls in there, these Holstein cows. And well, anyway, we were driving the pickup, my brother Craig and I, and we were dinking around there with the cattle. And I was in the back of the pickup, and Craig, we were learning how to drive and stuff. And Craig hit the gas pedal real quick, and I fell out of the back of the truck. The tailgate was down, and this big old herd bull saw me. And I remember Craig was kind of puttering, the truck was kind of stalling, and I looked up and I could hear this thud 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 thud. And I looked and I see this big old huge bull chasing me. I got up and I just ran as fast as I could, and just as I dove and I grabbed the back of the tailgate and held on to it, and the bull was just snorting. And Craig, one of the other brothers, was throwing rocks at him and beating me down with the stick that we had him back there. And he hit the gas just as he got there, and then we zoomed off and got a little bit further away from him. But we're talking a huge bull.
How old were
Sounds
you?
like a cartoon. 11 or 12. We drove all the time.
Don't tell my kids that, please.
Oh, that they were drunk.
Or
Different
on the
than
counter.
ours.
Yeah, General Stroll.
Farmers
They
do
don't
that all the
hear
time.
that part.
That doesn't matter to them.
No.
I got my first ticket when I was 15. I was driving my Jeep, and the officer stopped and says, "You don't look like you're old enough to be driving." Well, I'm not. Oh.
You were honest, even if you were underage.
Okay, Leanne. Almost close to telling you. We can only tell one, huh? Maybe we have time to go around again.
Yeah, we might.
When we lived in Huntsville, Alabama, and you're leaving during my story?
But you smell of it, you want me to.
It's okay, go ahead.
You can say anything you want. Go ahead, start all over. Where were you?
In Huntsville, at Jones Valley Elementary School, and I think it was the 5th grade, but I'm hoping Mom will say yes or no. Our class put on the play Romeo and Juliet, and of course we're all asked to try out for different parts. Every single girl in that class tried out for the part of the witch. Nobody wanted to be Juliet. They were so different. Every one of us tried out for the witch, so there was no Juliet. So the teacher looked around and she came up to me and she said, "Would you play Juliet?" And I didn't want to play Juliet. I thought I'd be a real good witch, you know. And so I said, okay. We had practices and stuff, but I was so embarrassed because, well, first of all, this guy that I kind of thought was cute and kind of had a little bit of a crush on ended up being Romeo. And then part of the play, he had to kiss me on the cheek, and I was absolutely mortified that Mom and Dad were going to find out that this guy was supposed to kiss me on the cheek. And so I wouldn't dare tell him, and so I just said, "Here, Mom, read this play." But then going through all the rehearsals and stuff, he was so embarrassed because here's this guy I liked and he had to kiss me on the cheek.
But it wasn't
So what was wrong with that?
Well, in 5th grade, it was quite embarrassing. I don't know. 5th grade.
That's the enemy.
Yeah. And then all the parents came, you know.
I remember helping you with your costume,
Yeah.
fixing your dress to be Julia.
In fact, that necklace that Tiffany just brought home last week, I said, oh, that's when I was Julia. I remember that. Really?
The blue rhinestone.
Yeah, the blue rhinestone with the white dress.
That was in 5th grade?
Was it 5th grade? 5th
I don't remember. I don't remember.
When she came and said she was engaged, I had to ask her who she was marrying. I had no idea that it was.
I didn't keep any of them straight until they got
Well, I
engaged.
knew.
Then I tried to remember their
I
names.
told her
so
to
many
quit
of
telling me who she was
She had to
dating
break a
because I
neck with
didn't
someone else
want
because
to
she
bother
was
to try and
engaged.
remember all these different names. I said, you tell me when you get engaged.
That's how I felt. That's how I felt.
I was third from the bottom.
Then when she said who, I said,
I wasn't the last guy.
But I dated. I had a list of guys I dated.
Remember,
He
you and
wasn't
I
on
went
the
to Rod
bottom.
Stewart because I didn't go out and fight.
All right, you were the last one, Mark.
I was
his last date.
he was my last date. We went to Rod Stewart concert because I wouldn't take this gal I'd already asked, Kelly
A month
Sorensen.
ahead of time, he'd asked her, and then meanwhile, I'd asked me to marry him, and I said, you can't go out with her.
But she would go out with the guys, two other
Well,
guys.
I wasn't engaged. I was not engaged.
But he couldn't go out.
No, this was after.
All of you girls in the same bed on Christmas Eve? I don't remember that.
I remember waking up in the middle of the night, and right on my belly button was a little white furry thing. Your mouse. Do you remember those rats or whatever?
Yeah.
Do you remember that? In Alabama. I remember it when you were telling the story. I remember, and I was asleep, and I remember. And I don't remember screaming. I don't remember yelling or screaming. But I think I wanted to smash it.
They got loose. They got
And
loose
then
in the
I woke
house,
up.
didn't they?
Yeah.
Did you get into its cage?
They were pests. They didn't bite or anything.
I've forgotten you had. Were they mice? Were they white
We
mice?
had mice and then we had hamsters.
They were mine.
We had parakeets.
First was a rat.
We don't follow this. The wire up here is not making connection. We need a new cord.
And Mom had to be in their bedroom reading. And so one by one we'd end up trailing into the bedroom, and start talking. And then, the bed would be covered with all the kids in the room full.
Eating popcorn.
I don't remember eating popcorn anymore.
Yeah.
And
Good
yes,
fun.
oh, it was so fun. Story after story, I can't remember.
We had a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And then this one we realized Mom and Dad were gone. They were there when we came, and then all of a sudden they're missing. And
I remember that.
They'd sneak out.
I don't know why they wanted to leave.
Come back in the other
Just
room.
to see if you missed it.
but I remember
No,
we
just to
found
have a
them
little
and
piece
dropped
of
it.
quiet.
No, just for fun.
For fun. To see what you'd do when you found out we were gone.
Yes.
Teresa.
And you didn't miss us for a while.
No.
Teresa's story of throwing dirt clods reminds me of my brother. He was 4.5 years older than me. And he'd take me out. We'd just plow a field, and they had just plowed a field. And he'd take me out, and I was so stupid that he would tempt me into throwing. He'd throw a couple of dirt clods at me, and we'd take all these clods and build forts, walls to hide behind. But before he'd build his wall, he'd throw a couple of dirt clods at me, and then I'd get dirt clods, and I'd just throw it as hard as I could. And so he'd know exactly how far my range was, see. And he'd start building his fort, and I would. And he'd keep backing up until I couldn't throw it to him. And then he'd nail me every time I go home crying. And I couldn't get it.
Frustrating.
Yeah, I was so dumb because he'd get out of my range every time.
You've been solar 4 years or so.
Kim, what was your other one that you had?
This one, I have to read it. I can't tell what it's telling. As I am told, and I know, I was an extremely fat baby, and when I began to walk, I had to wear large, army-looking shoes to protect my ankles. My grandmother lived in a trailer park not far from our home, and once week my mom and I would take my grandmother grocery shopping because she didn't drive. We had returned from shopping. My mom was helping my grandma put away the groceries. On the edge of the table was a loaf of bread just within my reach. I threw the bread to the floor and proceeded to walk up and down on it. By the time I was caught, I had totally flattened the bread. I guess those shoes were good for something.
That's good. You remember when I hit a tape recorder?
Yeah, I do. I saw
And taped it. I wish we could find that tape again. That was so fun, wasn't it?
And Ross was the furthest one from the tape, and you could hear her the best.
Sent it to me. I had it on my mission.
Maybe he still has it with his collection.
I don't know.
Maybe you have it. It would be fun to have it again.
But you can hear Rosalind, and she was the one.
That wasn't if when we were arguing. You always threatened to do that, to tape us arguing. What was this of?
This was just our noise. Breakfast, dinner. No, it was breakfast because the toaster went on.
Well, I remember.
Yeah,
That's right.
But we could have been.
79.
Oh, okay.
You
'Cause
were around yet.
I was almost around 1980.
I remember at somebody's reception when Carolyn got sick, and I said, you can come for the pictures, and then you go home.
I don't remember. I was delirious.
And looked down the line, and there was Carolyn, shaking hands with everybody that wanted some germs.
Typhoid Mary.
Well, I remember when I was younger, and Leanne and I used to always sleep in the same bed together all the time, and I always used to make sure that Leanne was the closest one to the door or the closest one to the window. So if anybody came in the door or the window, they'd take her first.
She makes me sit by the door or the window. Well, to get me first, what's she gonna do?
I could run by then, though.
They get her first. It's too late.
Then who will have your children?
Have your child?
No,
Have you ever thought of that?
Put on you first.
didn't hear it.
I thought when Russell's night.
I don't think that we've ever thought about the door.
Well, I haven't really since.
We never.
What door?
Never.
The door.
Being closer to the door. Or further from the door.
I have had it all. Oh, you can lay on
Did
that
you have
side.
signs? She's right here. Take her.
I should have. I didn't think of it, but I should have. No, because then you'd have caught on. Too. You'd have made the sign. You'd have caught on. You didn't know at the time.
Well, I have a story that when we first moved to La Cañada, California, and the very first day at school, and I don't know how old we were, Larry and I, coming home on the bus, had no idea where we were supposed to get off. We rode that bus every single stop and didn't know where to get off. The bus driver didn't know what to do with us, so he took us back to the big office, I guess, where they parked the buses. And did we know our phone number even to call Mom? I didn't remember knowing that. They must have called the school and got information or something.
I imagine not called by then.
Well, yeah, maybe so. I remember just sitting there crying, waiting for Mom to come. Oh, yeah, we knew, but we had no idea where
You went clear up to the end of Crown Avenue,
Yeah,
and then back to school.
They did that to me, except they made me get off on the last stop.
On the last,
really?
you had to get off.
I had to get off on the last stop, and I was upset. I was crying. I think
La
you came
Cañada?
by.
I know.
I think you came by, or one of you people family, because they just like, you got to get off. I can't take you anywhere. There's other kids there.
That's pretty sad. And I remember another time getting off the bus and having a goose chase me all the way home. Nipping at my heels. I was screaming all the way home.
La Cañada? In La Cañada?
For guard dogs in Mexico.
I don't remember what it was.
They use them for guard dogs.
Hey, Keith, tell us another one. Do you know? Can you think of another one?
I can't think of any more.
Hawkins, none has occurred to you since? Huh?
I only lost that memory.
When I think of you, I always think of you putting things together with rubber bands and tape and glue. I mean, you could make all kinds. If something had 10 rubber bands around it, you knew it would keep. Yeah, I mean, you would just always put things together like that, making interesting, creative things.
And cake and stuff too. You still
He did. To give to people. He'd make food to give to people.
Even when he was
Keith
little.
used to say to me, "Tell me something. I want to learn something. Tell me something."
Oh, and I like his line, but I haven't had first yet. Should I tell Russell's one with the yeah, in Alabama, remember? What? String onto them and fly the June bug.
You do that here.
How come we did that? That's so inhumane.
I still am afraid of them.
We've done it with
I
our
wrote
kids
down.
here.
I wrote down here that Sandra and I got so bored of doing it one afternoon that we tied one up and gave it to Russell, and he was just flying. And it just, usually they were trying to get away, but it kept circling him and circling him, and he was so terrified. It was so funny.
Oh, great sport.
Finally let it go. You were doing it with me. He let it go, so the poor June bug went tailing off with his string. He was going to get stuck in the tree.
You only lived for 3 days.
But I had it written down. You helped me.
It's written down.
Then it must be true.
I wrote it when I remembered it.
The thing, Robin wrote about the tornado, and what I remember about the tornado was looking at the sky and seeing a green sky. I thought it was so beautiful. I didn't remember hiding. I didn't remember any of the,
I think you all came out. I went out and watched. They said to watch.
I remember seeing that.
So I went out and watched, and I think all you kids came out at one time or another to kind of see what it looked like.
Yeah.
It
Well, I
was
didn't see
eerie.
the, I didn't remember, well, yeah, I did too. I did see the tornado just a little bit, but I remember looking at the sky and how it was a mirror of the ground, of all the green that was around. Beautiful.
We
It looked scary like what I thought it would be.
That happened a few times. That wasn't just the time of the tornado watch. The sky would get like that
Yeah, but it was
occasionally.
during a tornado.
Yeah, it was during those conditions, climatic conditions.
But I remember seeing the effect.
Make sure we get down the story.
His what?
Thank you, the wrong little
Oh. What was her name, Leanne? She was your friend, wasn't
I was
she?
supposed to get the spanking and I didn't. My dad grabbed my friend and thought thinking it was me.
I thought I was going to go to jail.
You probably would these days.
I don't remember.
I got three stories.
You had done something. It was in La Cañada. You had played with water, and so she had put on your dress.
That's right.
And he said, "Don't do it again." And this little girl did it again, and so he spanked her.
And who got lost? We were talking. Who got lost at the gas station? I know, but you and I were
I got left
talking.
at the gas station.
Yeah.
You got left at a gas station?
Oh, yeah, you went to the wrong house babysitting and we called the police because nobody knew where you were and you were just sitting there.
Tell me, I wasn't supposed
Oh,
to
I
be
was a
there.
normal child. They thought you were visiting her and they wondered why you were there, but they didn't.
They sat down to eat and I was sitting there wondering, why are they eating? Well, I don't believe I'm supposed to be babysitting and they're just sitting there.
She said it was between Horn and Garn
Well,
in their
that's what they
names.
said. They just said, can you come over right now? We want to go out. They didn't say their name that I remember. And they were both in walking
They
distance.
probably just wondered what you were doing there.
Yeah, they did. But she didn't say it. Like, what
Does
do you do?
anybody remember anybody getting left at the zoo? I thought I remembered leaving one of the kids at the zoo.
I thought the only time we left someone was, we left someone at church.
We thought we left Keith there once, but it was the orangutan.
And it was long.
And Farrell, I think that's the only time we left kids any
Norman at
place.
the gas station. I remember.
Norman?
Yeah, I think we
Farrell.
left there.
I don't remember leaving Norman. I remember Farrell.
Trouble.
Farrell was on a
I
trip.
remember,
Farrell
but
was in
Norman
Provo.
left. I wouldn't have remembered Farrell being left.
Farrell was
I
a
remember-
Provo,
I remember.
just going into the,
He was a pretty big guy when we left him.
Yeah, he
he wasn't
scared.
worried.
You would have
We
remembered.
would
He
get,
figured we'd be
we'd
back.
get bored without
Oh,
him.
we were going to the phone book to look up Uncle Berlin to call you guys.
We were?
Oh, me and you at the gas station.
Oh, gas station.
Yeah, it was a good time. They were going to buy me a pop and everything.
And then you had to show up.
Ruined it.
Great.
You didn't get pops too often, did you, in those days?
Teresa, do you have another one?
Dad, tell another supposed to keep going. I've got three on Dad.
I want to hear a childhood story from our parents.
I've got them.
No, from their childhood.
you remember?
You weren't there.
Dad had
You
another
weren't
one.
there. Well, I remember Dad had to walk uphill both ways to school and carry water in the creek in his hand. Go ahead, Dad.
You remember when he was a little girl?
Yeah.
He used to say, when I was a little girl, and some of you believed him.
I had to stop then.
Dad, tell him when you were 12 and you had the church basketball.
Well, he can pick one.
I don't know which one there was about this.
Tell your own story.
We went all over playing basketball.
Becky's gonna
Okay.
run it off. We'll
But
hear
this is my
another
own
one.
copy, so.
Okay, tell us.
Well, I was going to tell one, but I'm not sure that I should tell you.
Oh, that's the one we want to hear.
Well, that's the wrong way to start it. If you didn't want to.
Well, when we had a big ice pond where we all went ice skating when we were teenagers. We started when we were 11 or 12, and even younger. We were out ice skating during the day, and then sometimes we'd skate at night. And we got so that they when the ice was really thick, we'd take an automobile out on the ice.
I've heard this.
You heard it?
Keep going. Forget later.
Well, but and there's two things there, what if that automobile went through the ice, but we would get out on it and we'd get ice skaters along all sides of it, and it would go round and we could have been killed or rolled on or whatever because you get losing control, but and I don't remember, I don't think that I did anyone ever dared take ours out. Our car. But I remember that. And I wasn't there when one of the other kids put one out and went into the ice. And it was for a long time. It was weird.
Did the kids go in with it? I mean, they
That was Rulon giving his part.
I have one about Leanne. This will be
good.
All right. A few years ago, just when we were, Larry and I and Greg, we worked for Ray Huey's. We were laying block on this custom homes for Bison's home. And up there in the mountain, there's these big lizards, these chuckawallas. The chuckawallas they can get fairly long. Black and orange, funny looking lizards. We used to catch them. Because we were getting the rock off the mountain, and we were veneering the home with the rock. And so one day I put one in my lunchbox and brought it home. Oh. Leanne, I'd set my ice chest down, and Leanne always, clean it up. And
When was this? How long ago was this?
11
years ago?
First marriage, we were living there by my parents there in the little apartment. And Leanne, would do her stuff. She took the ice thing back. Anyway, she opened it up. She about killed me.
Did you ever do that for him again? I think you take care of your own.
I didn't lift that lid very high. As soon as I saw it, it went right back down.
It wasn't poisonous or anything. It was just big.
No, they're big lizards.
Looks like if it's black and orange.
They'd bite you anyway. They'd bite you, but they wouldn't, really hurt
They'd
you.
only go them.
You can see them in the zoo. They're red. They're kind of reddish bodied and dark brown.
Yeah.
This is Kazaiza. She got so mad at us for catching the lizards and keeping them in the house. We kind of had some mascots there. She got fried.
Okay, Mom, why don't you tell one about when you were little?
Do you think I was ever little?
Yeah, she said in the olden days.
In the olden days. When we lived in Verdon, we used to come over to Mesa for the family reunions. And the school didn't like it because half of the school kids were cousins in the take of it. We'd come over. And I had been sick that winter, and the only chance we had to come was in the back of a pickup. And so I couldn't come. Mother wouldn't let me come because I had been sickly. And she wouldn't let me come. And I don't remember who it was offered me a ride in their car so I could come to the reunion. And I just cried and cried. I was so happy that I could come over to the Richardson reunion.
How old were you?
I must have been,
You stayed with her with your mom stayed over?
well, I would have stayed with the family when I got over here, but I couldn't come with them.
No, I mean, if you could not have come, if you had to stay.
I don't know. I don't remember that. But I spent a lot of time being sick when I was little. Missed a few parties, and yeah. I got it all out of my system when I was little.
Yeah, she's been hale and hearty ever since.
Except once in a while when she gets sick.
Now, let's don't talk about that. Let's talk about when I was little, if we're going to talk about me.
The toaster that wouldn't tune into the station.
Never mind.
Now, when you hear these things from Rosa, you have to understand she makes the story a little bit better.
Kellen would never do that.
No, I'm just
Come around. Come around here. Come over here. Come on around this
No,
way.
you have lost Lurs.
Well, this has been a good party. We've been just late.
No, it's still going.
We've been going on a long time.
If we have any more, should we type them up and get them to you, or you can type it out?
Should I turn it off? I wanted to just say I just wanted to say a couple of things about our trip up to Salt Lake this time. We had a real nice interview. We spent quite a bit of time. Those two kids that were with us were just angels. They just were so good. We spent all day and waited for an hour and 15 minutes one place and 45 minutes another, and an hour and 15 minutes another. Just waited patiently for us, rather than leave them somewhere else with people they didn't really know that well. And we spent some time with Elder Apr1990, and he explained to us quite a few things that we didn't know, and really made us feel good about going to. And then the one little thing that I really wanted to say is that in priesthood meeting, you know how we go and get on the aisle there underneath the balcony? And I went in, they only have 2 lines now, so you come in from the back, and it was nearly full in the center, clear way back, but I could see that there were still places. And so I went up with the state president from Altamont, which is right on the edge of the UN's. So, and Moon Lake, he's on the edge of Moon Lake, and I was going to tell that story. But I went in and sat down there and waited, and Elder Hartman Rector came, and then H. Burke Peterson, who is also the area president for the Oklahoma area too. And he came, he didn't see me at first, he came and saw his brother John. He knew where he'd be, because he was the state president and the regional representative now. But he saw him, and then after he kind of finished talking to him, he looked up and saw me, and he came over, kind of made me feel really good, because he was excited to tell me about this mission that I've been called to. And he was just out there last week for a tour of the mission, and talked about the good missionaries. He says that President El Rey, who was the president of the Tulsa mission, really had given me the cream of the crop, and was taking those that were problems and going to solve those problems himself, instead of giving me a whole bunch of problems too. And it was really, he told me that he was going to do that, but
Elder Breyer said, "Oh yeah."
That he did. Yeah.
Elder Breyer didn't believe that.
He didn't believe that when he said that's what he said. And then he told me, and then he gave me some, personal advice that was just really good about what he thought the best mission presidents did from his viewpoint. And he interviews.
Go out.